Let's talk about the economy and what the Tinubu administration hopes to achieve with the recent rebasing of Nigeria's GDP. What are some of the takeaways and what should Nigerians understand in terms of expectations or the objectives of this particular exercise? Is that just another academic exercise, or will it have real-life impact on the lives and livelihood of Nigerians going forward? Joining us virtually to add value to the conversation is economist Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu, joined the conversation live this hour. Doctor, thank you most kindly for your time. I appreciate you for joining us this evening. People are divided, as usual, about what this actually means, whether it's a net positive or just something of a performance. Where do you stand on the recent rebasing of Nigeria's GDP?
Thank you very much for having me. You see, rebasing is something that is done all over the world to capture time lapse between a base year that the economy was adjusted to reflect the current realities of the time, and then the time lapse between that very particular period and the years ahead. So, for instance, the last time Nigeria economy was rebased was under former President Goodluck Jonathan. I think that was around 2010. And what I did was to capture other emergent activities in sectors that were not captured in the economy. So now we're talking about capturing between 2010 to 2025 to see which are the emerging businesses, new entrant into the system, as well as those areas that have not been captured. So the essence is to ensure that companies or other services or other areas that the country has earned income over time, for instance, the digital economy that has not been captured from 2010 should be captured between 2010 and 2025. So it is something that is being done all over the world. But the question is, how honest are we about this process? Are we doing it to really capture the economy or to inflate the figures to give people this very particular belief that the economy is growing, whereas the economy is declining? So it is the honesty with which this is pursued that is always at question. It is not the exercise itself, but the honesty of those that are driving the process.
So why do you think that question is important? Why would Nigerians question the honesty of the government in terms of capturing the realities of the largest economy on the continent?
Well, when you juxtapose, because at the end of the day, by the time the exercise is completed, I bet you the economy would have been enlarged, our GDP would have been increased, and then debt to GDP ratio would have increased. But when you juxtapose that with the living condition of Nigerians, when you juxtapose that with high cost of living, and above all, they are not talking about increased productivity. You know, when you're talking about increased productivity, for instance, there is increment in terms of productivity in agriculture. There is increment in tourism. There is increment in terms of output and income earned in terms of hospitality. Now, when you talk about national productivity, you're talking about the sum total of the output of a given number of persons in a geographical area known as Nigeria over a long period of time. When you talk about rebasing, you are just rebasing, and the process of rebasing is to use current figures. Now, if you're using current figures to calculate the economy, to show that there is increment, then you should be honest enough to use the current figure to evaluate poverty, and then those that are living in abject poverty. Almost about 80 million Nigerians or thereabout are poor. So if that is the case, and people are concerned about high cost of living, our prices are not crashing, agricultural products are untouchable in the market. Tomatoes, So when you so it is not reflective of people's living standard or the welfare of the people. On that, so it tells you that the GDP has increased, and I think the measure of people's wellness using GDP is the most fraudulent measure I've ever seen in my entire life, because it does not tell the well-being of the people. So you may have an economy that is 3 trillion US dollars, but if people are living in abject poverty and poverty continue to increase, and the number of out of school children continue to increase, maternal and infant mortality rate continue to increase, mortality rate among adults continue to increase, and you say you've rebased the economy, that Nigeria has a very large economy. It doesn't make sense. It is not about quality. It's not about quantity. It's about quality rather. So you can't say that the economy has grown and the people are declining in terms of all the indices of measuring well-being. And you say that you have raised the economy. We should claim that we are the largest economy in Africa. Who does that?
I mean, Doctor, I'm sure you're familiar with the expression, causation is not correlation. Are you saying that there's a correlation between the size of the GDP of an economy and the conditions of living or even the welfare and well-being of the people?
Of course. Of course. Even as a person, your income determines your well-being as a person. Where you work now, if you are not being paid commensurably to take care of your needs, even your dressing sense, even your confidence, your self-confidence, your self-worth would have been eroded. You see, the best people that I've seen that are able to measure growth and well-being are the Chinese. The Chinese are not using GDP. They use happiness. How many people are happy with what we are doing? How many people are happy in terms of their well-being within the society? And they look at it from homes for the aged to pensioners that are being paid timely, to infrastructure, to healthcare delivery, and they put all of this together. How are these impacting the Chinese? Don't forget, within the space of 10 years, the Chinese brought out 100 million Chinese out of poverty. That is real growth. And this real growth does not impact the people that were brought out of poverty, but it's reflected on their national productivity, their GDP globally. But back home, they don't use GDP to measure well-being or the health of the economy or the health of the people or the well-being of the people. They use happiness. That, okay, how many people are happy because they are Chinese citizens? How many people are free from poverty? How many people are free from hunger? The same hunger that we are talking about, the same hunger that is leading to protests. So there is a correlation between the wealth of a nation and peace, stability, and development. In fact, there's a correlation between the wealth of a nation and democratic process. I tell you, in a situation where people are hungry and you have bandits, you have people that are willing to be hired to rig election, I tell you, they are going to derail democracy. And that is exactly what is happening in Nigeria today. We are operating democracy, but because of poverty, and go and check, since the return to democracy since 1999, poverty has been on the increase. So also is corruption and abuse of office that has deprived people good life in this country. And this tells us why we're having on our ends insurgents across the country. You have the kidnappers doing their thing. You have Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast, and other groups that are threatening the peace and stability of this country. So there is a correlation between national wealth, which will tell you the access you may get to your income, whether you be employed or not, whether there is employable opportunities or not, whether your income can sustain you or not, and then national productivity and the well-being of the people. Anybody that tells you there is no correlation, the person is just not being honest.
Right. Some would say it's become quite obvious that the African continent is undoubtedly the richest continent on the planet. But of course, you have a significant percentage of the global population that are living below the poverty line on the continent. People that have the richest natural resources are also some of the poorest people. But also, just to drive home the point you made earlier, some people feel, just like you added, that this is an economic accounting necessity. It's not necessarily a gimmick. So according to the data, right, after the rebasing, Nigeria's new GDP now is estimated at 372.8 trillion naira, and is based on the new base year of 2019, marking a 41.7% increase, right? But also, according to the Bureau of Statistics, in the first quarter of this year, the Nigerian economy has grown by 3.13%. Isn't it possible that we're talking about two sides of the same coin here? While we're dealing with all of these challenges, the economy is not necessarily contracting, it is actually growing.
Well, you see, whenever you have challenges all over the world, challenges are economic opportunities all over the world. And that is the basis of entrepreneurship. What is entrepreneurship? Somebody dictating a problem that he or she can fix and then can get rewarded for fixing those problems. So, and that is why African economy continue to grow. Not because we are performing magic, but because we have problems that can be solved. And that is why capital all over the world are pouring into Africa, not only Nigeria. So if you reckon with that and you understand this, you come to realize that we are not doing anything exceptional, our economy is growing. No, it's because we have a lot of problems to solve and people are willing to bring in money to invest. But again, when you look at it critically, the point is when you're talking about growth, this growth is growth for growing sake. Is it growth for growing sake that makes an economy to us, or the welfare of the people under such economy? You see, a majority of the countries that we envy today, you go to Singapore, if you go and check when you took over Singapore, up to the time you left until today, the income of an average Singaporean could keep pace with the growth in their GDP. But in Nigeria, the more we grow out of proportion. And then that poverty will be increasing side by side. There's a problem. And this is the fundamental problem that we need to address. It's either we're not ourselves the truth or we're just playing ostrich to a problem that we one day just the way it has started consuming us. So you can't tell me that you base the economy and you're talking about 38 point something trillion or thereabout economy, and then more than or close to half of the population is living below the poverty line. So how do you convince me that the economy is growing and that the economy is having positive, whatever growth that will not impact the people, that will not impact the nation, then there's a problem. We're having deficit. Our healthcare is more, right? Our educational system is comatose. So what are we talking about? Even the purchasing power is very low. Naira has been useless as a result of inflation. So like rebase the economy, if you cannot do anything to resist problems to the extent that they are reducing, and even if you grow 4.5% or 10.8%, and then the welfare of the people to decline, I bet you there is and we are going to have crisis. And that is where we are. What has been happening since 1999 is without any impact. So the more the economy expands, the more we grow, the more the people become more poor. And once the people become more poor, there will be what? There will be agitation, there will be apprehension, there will be what? There will be chaos. And that is exactly what is because people are beginning to resort to self-help. So you have the kidnappers that are kidnapping for some, right? You have that are robbing us using their pens. So it's a serious problem until they translate from quantitative change to qualitative that will impact the life of the people. And I said, both of the countries, go to Canada. What is the population of Canada? What do they have? They have virtually nothing. To Singapore, what do they have? Nothing. Human capital and governance system that distribute wealth among the people. And what do? They reduce disparity among the people. That is what Lee did. That is what Malaysia. That was what is being done in Rwanda, where the resources of the people is used to alleviate poverty. And if you read Rebasing and Asemoglu in their book, Why Nation Fail, they said one thing, and that's how inclusive is the system in distribution of wealth. If the wealth distribution is the one that is excluding people, no matter how big is the economy, there will be crisis. This crisis will equally undermine the economy, just the way the crisis we refuse to address is on the economy, and things are closing are relocating to Ghana and other African countries that are serious about security of life and property.
Right. We're completely out of time, Doctor, but I believe we have room to entertain a 10 to 20 seconds response. Is this a macroeconomic conversation or a microeconomic one? Because people are also saying there's an upside to it. Investors could flood in if the Nigerian GDP is profitable, as the current figures suggest. So what do you think in 10, 20 seconds?
It is both macro and micro. And you cannot get a micro right if you cannot get a macro right. And you cannot get a macro right by neglecting micro. So God bless Nigeria that we have 50 trillion US dollar economy. If there is security, I bet investor will bring money into this country. Yet, let us get this very quickly and we will solve our problems very quickly. So if you like, rebasing to foreigners, they will come, they will peep to Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and they will fly back. And they will tell us that they cannot invest because the areas they needed to invest, kidnappers will not allow them to operate, or Boko Haram will not allow them to operate. So let's be real.
All right. Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for the analysis. Appreciate you for joining us on Daily Politics.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And with that, we wrap things up for tonight's edition of the program. Thank you most kindly for joining us on the program. Daily Politics returns tomorrow, live and exclusive on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. For myself and the rest of the team, we'll see you next time.